morning. Hey everybody. You can ignore the links on the live. They're just there to make sure I don't get, dinged by the tickety talks. It's not real, so you can just ignore that. But happy Saturday to all of you. How's everyone doing? What am I doing? Where's my brain cells? So because TikTok does this stupid thing where they will give you like dings on your account if you don't link something, which is totally ridiculous and dumb because most of us don't want to link or sell anything. This is just book club. We're just reading and talking about books. We don't need to sell anything. There's no point in selling anything on this, right? But if you don't do that, they give you dings and it's like, whatever. So this morning I thought to myself, well, what's an appropriate thing to link for book club? And all of us drink coffee, well, not all of us, but a lot of us drink coffee during book club, right? Like it's a pretty normal thing that we do here. We drink coffee, we talk about our books, blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, I use an espresso every morning. And a lot of people ask me which Nespresso pods I use and stuff like that. And even though I don't care what Nespresso pods you use or what coffee you drink, I was like, well, if I have to link something, why don't I link an espresso thing? Because that at least it would be kind of legit because I actually do use it. Do you know that the sellers on TikTok who sell Nespresso stuff sell it for like a 50% markup? It's insane. That's why I didn't link it, because it's absolutely outrageously priced. Could not bring myself to do that. Would not, could not. Would not, could not in a boat. Would not, could not on a boat. I was just in shock. So I did not do that. So I went and found some book club t-shirts just cause. Why are you not feeling good, Anya? What happened? Is it because of your shots? So anyway, that's what happened this morning. That was my journey into the unknown, if you will, of searching for something that we can put on this live to not get a restriction. It's truly insane. Like, there's literally no point to it. This is book club. Why do we have to sell something to have a book club? Why can't we just have a peaceful book club where we read and we don't sell anything? There's no selling going on. We're just talking about books. That's it. I even looked for the book that we're reading to see if it was available on TikTok Shop so I could link that. It's not. Anyway, how's everyone doing? I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. Oh, it's not your fault, Gigi. It's stupid, Oh, you said seriously, not sorry. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's so dumb, you guys. I don't understand it for the life of me. And, I don't see the point of it. It doesn't produce any kind of camaraderie. It doesn't produce community. It doesn't bring us together. It doesn't aid in anything. I don't like it. I wish that the books that we were reading were available because that would be the most logical thing to link because that, okay, well, there's logic there. I want you to actually read this book, because it's fun. But, other than, oops, sorry. I'm getting heated. I shouldn't get heated. But anyway, that's what I've been doing this morning. What do I want to drink? I have the hiccups. Always. You have a headache? Oh, have you had your coffee this morning? Sometimes that helps. Yes, mornings are always book club. It's true. It is our tradition. I reread Fourth Wing over the last 2 days and it's still the twilight of 21 days. That's funny. That is funny, Jess. It's so true. I don't know if I'll be doing slime later today. I will decide after I run all my errands. Prego hiccups are more hiccups than usual. Yes, that is 100% correct, Gigi. What is vibrating? That would be my coffee maker because I make coffee every morning for survival. And that is not an ad. That's just real. I just really make coffee every morning for survival. And then after that, we all read. So anyway, that's the whole situation. Although I do have to say the coffee maker is being abnormally loud this morning. Not really sure why it's doing that. I'm not a huge fan of the noises it's making, but we're gonna roll with it just the same because we need coffee. We can't survive without it. Whose survival years are the people around you? I mean, all of us, Sloth, because he can't survive without it either. I did just descale it, yeah. I did, you're right. Right. It does seem louder, Gigi, you're right, but it's done now, thankfully, so we can have some peace and quiet. Whew. Now that that's over, we're just waiting for the milk to do its thing. That doesn't seem like quite enough. Hold on. It did shift gears. I want a little bit more peppermint in mine. Because why not? So yesterday in my keto crate, I got a new brand of peanut butter cups. They're sugar-free, and so I'm gonna try one. So your husband said they're pretty good. This looks more like a Rolo than a peanut butter cup to me, but it says it's a peanut butter cup. I'm gonna go ahead and let Secret Husband have the whole bag. I don't need those. I don't need that. No. Okay, well. That is not a peanut... That is not a peanut butter cup. Yeah, he can have the whole bag. We don't have to share that. You don't want me to, Brie. It tastes like something I want out of my mouth. Like unsweetened dark chocolate, which is fine, but just like dry peanut butter powder in the middle that doesn't actually have any peanut butter flavor. Yeah, Angela, pretty similar to that. That was not good. Why did he do that to me? My 3-year-old just told me I'm bothering him, like, sorry, I asked you to sit down. Who said that to their mom the other day? One of Becca's kids. Michelle. It was a sugar-free peanut butter cup that was not a sugar-free peanut butter cup. It was a lie. It was a bold-faced lie. There was no peanut butter flavor at all. It was like, I hate it. I don't want it. I don't recommend it. 10 out of 10. Do not recommend to a friend. Morning, Avery. If you guys need sugar-free peanut butter cups, get the Chalk Zero ones. I mean, honestly, if you need sugar-free anything, get the Chalk Zero brand. This is not sponsored. I get nothing for saying this. It's just what I actually eat. It's so good. It's the only sugar-free, right? Seriously. I'm gonna have some coffee cake at breakfast, but I'm out of milk. and I want to go get milk first because I don't like to have any kind of muffins or cake things without milk. I'm just that person, but I'm out of milk. So I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna get milk, and then I'm gonna eat another coffee cake that Sharon made me. But yes, Priscilla is correct. They are number one. How do you spell it? It's like, yeah, it's similar to chocolate. It's C-O, that is a lie. C-H-O-C, like the beginning of chocolate, and then 0. So C-O, no, why do I keep doing that? What is wrong with my brain? Thank you, Sloth spelled it correctly. Why was that happening to me? Why all of a sudden couldn't I spell? It's C-H-O-C 0. I am so sorry. That literally, like, my brain couldn't spell for a second. I've seen the label 800 times in my life. It's all over my home, and yet here we are with the inability to spell. Yes, pregnancy brain. It was the peanut butter. Yeah. So anyway, Chalk Zero. I've never tasted anything from Chalk Zero that I didn't like, which is, I think, a pretty A+ review for them. They have sugar-free, like the little freeze-dried marshmallows, like if you're having, what do you call it? I've never had the truffles, Anya, so I can't speak to those. You know, like in, like fruit, in Lucky Charms, they've got little marshmallows like that. I put those in like my fake ice cream sometimes. They have peanut butter cups. They have cookie butter. They have like a Nutella. It's not Nutella, of course, but like a fake Nutella. They also have like little chocolate bars with caramel in them. What else do they have? I can't remember now, but they have a lot of good stuff, and I put a lot of it in things that I make, just as like a replacement, you know? 10 out of 10 don't recommend, though I would enjoy them. Oh yeah, I've never had their truffles, so I can't speak to that. But everything else I've had from them has been good. Their white chocolate peanut butter cups that they have at Christmas time, I mean, real good. Those are even better than the regular ones. They're soft and squishy in the middle with like real peanut butter in the middle, just like sugar-free peanut butter. And they're covered in like white chocolate. I know it's not really white chocolate or whatever, but like instead of dark chocolate, which is yummy. It's yummy. I like it. Yesterday when we got these fake peanut butter cups in the mail, I asked Secret Husband, are they better than the Chalk Zero ones? And he said, I don't remember what the Chalk Zero ones taste like. And I said, well, they're over there on the counter. And instead of comparing them, he just ate the new one. And he was like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I was like, okay. I don't know if we trust his taste buds any longer, because the DNA test proved that that was a lie. Pretty gloomy outside today, y'all. It's pretty gloomy. Anyway, we're gonna read like we do. And just as a note to everybody, so far we have absolutely no restrictions on this live. I hate that we have to do this thing. I really don't like it, but no restrictions. The proof is in the pudding. We have Washington weather today. Yeah, it is a marine layer. You're exactly right, Gigi, because we're really close to the marina. Yep. Yeah. It's pretty gloomy. We have a lot of errands to run today, though, so I hope it doesn't rain or anything. Oh, there's a little girl learning to ride her bike. Very cute. She's got one of those really cute little dinosaur helmets on. You know, the ones that have like the little... That's very cute. Yeah. I think I knew that, Gigi. It is a nice, and I think you live, what I mean, and I'm not going to say where it is, obviously, but I think I've driven through the area that you live in, just knowing what I've seen of your address. I think I've driven through there, and it is nice. All right. It is time, hey, Danielle, for chapter 14. I just got a really cool text message from Liv, because we've been talking about what we can do for a Christmas collab, and her new idea that she just texted me is absolutely adorable. So that's fun for the whole family.
But here we go. Chapter 14. Josh had rather been expecting a dramatic entrance, perhaps another door crumbling to its constituent parts and exploding across Hopkins' bedroom, but no. Essie just lifted the latch and walked right in. Matthew Hopkins, Essie said as the moonlight illuminated a figure beneath heavy blankets, I bind thee to my will. Oh, well, they're jumping right into it today, aren't they? No lead in today. The figure jerked and Hopkins' eyes opened wide. I call on winter to rise from the earth. I call on snow to darken the sky. I call on ice to still the water. And I call you by missile and holly and yew. I call you by the force of my own will. Josh knew that in 1647 it was a mild summer night, and that the long grass and flowers that grew in the meadows didn't say winter. He knew that, but it smelled of winter. He smelled the cold crackle of frost and the gentle freshness of pine. From 3 feet away, he felt the cold radiating off of Essie. Begone, gasped Hopkins, but his voice was frail. I call on ice to bind this evil, said Essie, and her voice grew stronger. Bind the malevolence of Matthew Hopkins and freeze it in time and let it be no more. Her voice contained multitudes. Josh suddenly felt that Essie wasn't alone and that he could hear other voices joining in and slithering all around them. It created harmonics that sawed at every nerve he had. He glanced at the faint light that was Mary the ghost. She had drifted closer to Essie, and now he could make out the faint outline of a woman in a blood-stained shift dress. Frost crackled on the window panes. I cast your evil down beneath the earth, Essie said, and her eyes glowed green. By my will, I will bind you. And Josh realized that Mary was not the only ghost in the room. Matthew Hopkins, they all said, and whispers slipped into Essie's voice. No more shall ye walk the earth, no more shall ye lie and cheat, no more shall ye kill. Ooh. The voices grew stronger and stronger, and Josh didn't dare move, not even his eyes. He stared resolutely at Essie, whose outline seemed to be of more than one person. Matthew Hopkins, they vowed, voices rising to a howl. I bid thy ghosts to peaceful rest. I bind thee beneath the earth to never rise again. And I will it so, and so it will be. And with a sudden sucking sensation, the combined force of Essie's will and the ghosts that crowded the chamber surged towards Matthew Hopkins, whose body jerked almost off the bed, and then, with a great gasp, he laid still. Essie wavered, and Josh caught her as she fell. The room was abruptly empty. Whatever spirits had filled the air had vanished now, and it was just the two of them kneeling on the cold flagstones, and from the bed came the sounds of labored breathing. Is he dying? Asked Josh. He wasn't sure if he felt good about that or not. His soul is gone. He's just a shell, gasped Essie. We have to go. The door, the time door. It's here? She nodded. Her skin was a bluish white. Her fingers had no strength as they clutched at his, and she jerked her head to his left. That way. Somehow, he managed to get her half to her feet and pretty much dragged her from the room. And as he did so, another door seemed to close somewhere else. But there was no one there, and Josh was too worried to think about it. That way, Essie murmured, but Josh could already feel the door. Through this room, and then into the one beyond it. Startled faces looked up at him from pallets on the floor. These goddamn rooms that all just led into one another. Excuse me, he said, and he dragged Essie through the room to the door beyond. It was red, and there was a motif of an hourglass on it. It seemed to glow around the edges. Josh reached out, and their combined hands lifted the latch, and as a voice came from behind the door opened, and they tumbled through it. Thou art a witch, breathed the Goodwin girl, her voice fading like the breeze, and Josh kicked the door closed, and then there was silence. He and Essie lay on the wooden floor in the darkness. The only sound he heard was her breathing hard and ragged, as if she had just run a marathon. Hey, are you okay? He said. Yes, she panted. It took a lot out of me. Josh felt for her in the darkness and pulled her close. She was cold, but not deathly cold. Her head lolled against his chest. She was clearly exhausted. "No, look, I've got you," he said, although it seemed horribly inadequate. She had just banished a soul to hell or something like that, and all he had done was open a door. "Are we back home?" she said. "I don't know. No one's chasing us." He tried to peer into the gloom. He could make out a window, though which very little light came. "I figured that someone would be chasing us or something. There was a voice." "The Godwin girl. I think she was a witch." Essie shook her head. "She didn't follow us, did she?" No, I don't think so." A pale blue light suddenly appeared at the end of what seemed to be a corridor, and Josh felt Essie brace herself, which, given her exhaustion, was probably the bravest thing that he'd ever encountered. Footsteps sounded on the stairs, and then more lights, suddenly bright and blinding as light bulbs popped into life, and around the corner came Avery with a phone in his hand. The electricity's back on," they remarked. "Come on, Josh, you don't want to miss the baby being born." Essie woke hours later in her own bed with her phone charging on the table and Tompkins the cat purring on her chest. "Oh my God, 21st century, I love you so much," she moaned. She reached for her phone, gasping as her muscles protested. She couldn't remember the last time that she had felt this exhausted, not even after the first time she performed the winter ritual by herself. Had it worked then? Had going back in time and redoing the initial ritual actually worked? As he wasn't entirely sure about the quantum mechanics of the last 24 hours, she'd always been the one to create the ritual and banish Hopkins, or had she just changed history? Her phone said it was early afternoon, the day after they'd fallen through the time door, and she had little recollection of what happened after they got back last night. She and Josh had stumbled into Sienna's delivery room, where Blessing was, thankfully, in attendance, and then Maud had said something like, "You need to get your rest, child. There's more to come," and Essie somehow made her way to bed after that. "Hey, is everything all right?" Essie asked Tompkin, who indicated with a flick of his ears that, yeah, everything seemed to be. "Did Sienna have her baby?" His disdain told her that she had, and that it was noisy, and he was unimpressed with the child. Under all this, however, was the impression that everything was all right, and nobody in the house was upset or concerned. "Oh, is it a boy or a girl?" she asked, and Tompkins made bored noises and battered at her fingers. He didn't really care enough to know. Essie shifted a grumbling Tompkin and dragged herself out of her bed, realizing, as she did, that she was still wearing the linen shift that Agatha had given her. On the floor was a stained bodice and a skirt with petticoats and a corset. She stepped over it all and took a very long hot shower before getting dressed. Oh God, she would never take a pair of knickers and a bra for granted, ever again. Or trousers. Trousers were just the best thing in the whole world. There was such a lack of a draft. Finally, she picked up her spare glasses and perched them on her nose. "All right then," she said, and left her room. The house certainly seemed calm. There was even some cautious sunlight filtering through the windows, and as he found her mother's portrait currently empty of any human figures. In the background of it was the house that she now recognized as the old Brooke Manor, where Mistress Agatha had sheltered them, and she wondered what had become of that lady. Had she been the one to set the witch ball in Brooke Manor Farm? Her footsteps took her down to the kitchen, which was bright. Warm room, utterly like anything in the smoky cavern where Master Goodwin's servants had slept. What had become of him, too? Had he known that his daughter was a witch? Had she been the one to rename Beldam House? "Ah, there you are, dear." Avery was at the stove. "Are you hungry?" Essie's stomach growled. "Yeah, I haven't eaten in nearly 400 years. Avery nodded. Bacon and eggs, then?" "Thanks." There was a pot of tea on the table, and Essie poured a cup and sat down, and the clock ticked. All was quiet. "Hey, is everything okay?" "Looks like it. Your mother's going out and paying calls because apparently she thinks it's, the 18th century or something." 17th, said Essie. "Whatever. Maud keeps muttering darkly about her knitting. Prudence has got off to hang out in the woods. Blessing is doing..." Avery waved around. "Baby things." "Is Sienna okay?" Essie realized guiltily that she should have asked sooner. Tompkins hadn't exactly been forthcoming. And the baby?" "Oh, a boy. No name yet. Mother and baby are doing well." A boy. Josh had a nephew. So no complications. None whatsoever. It was a funny thing. As soon as Josh got in there, she calmed right down. He was like a sort of hand-holding epidural, very calming presence. A plate of food was put down in front of Essie, who began shoveling it in with indecent haste. You're reading nearly as fast as you're American. I had to lend him some clothes. Essie looked up and said through a mouthful of eggs, "Oh, is he okay?" Avery shrugged. "I'm sure he will be. A bit bruised, no more than that." They had been jolted around quite a bit in the past. The past. Already it felt like a rather terrible holiday that she wanted to forget. Did he go home? She wouldn't really blame him. Even for a witch, it had been a terrifying and baffling period. She couldn't imagine how Josh felt. He was probably on a plane back to Seattle already. "Oh no, he's upstairs in the library. Don't worry, Molly's keeping an eye on him." "Marley the dog?" Avery shrugged. "Yeah, he promised to howl if any books tried to eat him." Marvelous. Essie finished her plate of food and threw a piece of Avery's chocolate cake down her throat just because she could, and then she downed some Coke for the same reason. And then she set off upstairs. Her stomach fluttered a bit, and she and Josh had kissed a couple of times in the past, and they'd been really good kisses. Really, really good kisses. Essie wanted more of those kisses. She thought she wanted more than just kisses too, but was she actually ready for that? And would Josh understand? But the library was empty apart from a large book open on the stand. Essie scanned the pages, and it appeared to be a genealogy of the Hopkins family, which she didn't even know they possessed. Well, the library did have a secret dimension of its own. Essie skipped back to the start of the book, which was too far, beginning in the Middle Ages, and then forward to find Matthew Hopkins, born in 1619. Died 1647, after suddenly contracting a chill. "Well, you don't say," said Essie dryly to the book. Beneath Matthew Hopkins was an entry for John Hopkins, born 1644, mother unknown. The child had grown, married, and had children of his own, and the line had passed on and on until it reached Edward Hopkins of London, who married Martha Mason of New York, and their son was Edward Mason Hopkins. By his first wife, a son, Joshua. By his second wife, a daughter, Sienna. To Sienna, born 29 October 2022, a son, father unknown. The book was printed and bound. The ink was dry and old. Essie stared at nothing for a while, and then she said, "What, you don't already know his name then?" She tried to turn the last page, but it became hot under her fingers, and she yanked her hand back, staring in astonishment as the page turned to flames and ash in under a second. "All right, then, sorry, I won't ask," she said, and stepped back, frowning at the book. The ashes had already blown away, even though there was no breeze. "No more of that, all right, you hear?" The book said nothing. "Just don't call him Matthew," said Essie, and she left. Behind her, the word Matthew glowed briefly in the air. Some instinct took her upward to the first place she had taken Josh in this house. The rich, earthy scent of the conservatory hit her as soon as she opened the door, and a chill that she hadn't realized she was feeling dissipated in the warmth there. Josh sat on a bench amid the giant pitcher plants and fly traps. He wore his usual plaid shirt and jeans because even though Avery had lent him clothes, they wouldn't have dreamed of doing so without altering them to fit him first. There were smudges under Josh's eyes, and as he lifted one of Avery's... I think that this word is meant to be aphrodisiac, but it's anaphrodisiac, so like non-aphrodisiac. Oh, I get it. Because he's going into there, he needs a non-aphrodisiac. Okay, yeah, sorry, that is correct. Excuse me. Let's try that again. There were smudges under Josh's eyes, and as he lifted one of Avery's anaphrodisiac biscuits to his mouth, Essie saw that his hand was bandaged. "Hey, what happened?" she said, and looked up. "Oh, hey." He waved his hand at her. "I told Sienna she could hold my hand during the birth." "Ooh, ouch." "Yeah, I mean, she was probably in more pain, but still, I survived being accused of witchcraft in the 17th century only to break my hand when I got back to the safety of the 21st century. He regarded it and waggled his fingers. "Your mom's a dab hand with a splint, though, and I should probably not ask what was in the special drink that she gave me." "Yeah, no, probably not," agreed Essie. She moved closer, and Josh looked tired, but thoughtful, and all the more handsome for it. Hey, congratulations on becoming an uncle, she said, and Josh shrugged nonchalantly. Oh yeah, it was nothing. Essie smiled and he smiled back and patted the bench beside him. She sat and he put his arm around her, and there was a comfort that she found from him in the cellar 400 years ago. Josh had seen her weirdness laid bare now. He'd watched her perform the winter ritual, and he'd seen the wood freeze. He'd traveled through time with her, for heaven's sakes, and he'd kissed her a couple of blisteringly hot times. Essie reached for the plate of biscuits and crammed one in her mouth. Did you sleep at all? He asked, and she nodded, chewing and swallowing. The biscuits were like cardboard. Yeah, for half the day, and I still feel like I was hit by a bus. Yeah, you were witching pretty hard there for a while. Witching, is that a verb now? His eyes were warm. Is there another verb you prefer? Hey, Katie. No, witching works for me. Yeah, it sure does. The conservatory was warm and fragrant, and Josh's arms felt exactly right around her. So, you saw that ledger? She said. Yeah, Matthew Hopkins, self-proclaimed witch-finder general, is my 10 times great-grandfather. Josh stared at the tall, dramatic flowers of the sacrania, which were beginning to smell like cat pee. That really sucks for me. Yeah, but hey, listen, look, you're not him, okay? He murdered hundreds of witches. No, he murdered hundreds of people. Probably very few of them were actually witches, corrected Essie. Because witches would fight back. I don't suppose any of his victims gave up without a fight, as he said, but how could any of us fight back until revealing ourselves? If I tried to freeze him when anyone else was watching, do you think that they would have noticed? Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, eh? That's about the size of it. Josh said, I looked up Mistress Agatha, too. She raised the boy in that house until there was a fire maybe 10 years later, and then they moved to Brook Manor Farm. Your house? My house. As he thought about the witch ball in the upstairs room of Josh's house, the one that had smashed and broken just after he moved in. Hey, did you ever take a picture of that parchment inside the witch ball? She asked. He seemed surprised that she'd even asked, as he knew it wasn't a coincidence that made him keep forgetting. Yeah, I did, sure, just, hang on here a second. He dug his phone out of his pocket and scrolled through it. Here, I can't make out these words, but as he could. She wasn't an expert in reading old handwriting, but the words leapt right off the page at her in a way that had nothing to do with her eyes. I, the right and goodly Hopkins, do swear withal to abjure the devil and all who worship him, and more, I will see ye clearly those bedlams who are so ungodly, and they never will cross this threshold or seat at my hearth, and never will I pray fall to they tricks and knavery, this I swear. The words made bile rise in her throat, and she had to look away for a moment. Essie? Yeah. Yeah? She swallowed. I'm fine. Does that mean anything to you? Josh asked, and Essie frowned at the screen. There was bloodied fingerprints in a cluster at the bottom, like a terrible finger painting. One of them, she was fairly sure, would be Josh's. Yep, so one of your ancestors definitely wrote this, she said. I can't read it aloud. I literally physically can't, she said, looking up at him. It won't let me. Honestly, it makes me feel a bit sick. All right, then I'll delete it, said Josh, and she shook her head. No. It's important that you know what it is to you so you can decide what to do with it. As he took a couple of deep breaths, it says basically that you reject the devil and his followers, and that you wish to be able to see witches clearly, and that we're never allowed to cross your threshold or sit at your hearth and all that stuff. Josh was silent for a minute. So that's why you had to be invited into my house? Yes. So every time? Yes. It also says that you will never be deceived by any of our tricks. Well, I haven't been, said Josh. I don't think I was deceived by you doing that binding spell or moving through time or like the freezing door or any of that stuff. And the house's perception spell never really worked on you. Beldam's, Essie said. You kept remembering me right from that very first day. Josh frowned down at her in honest bewilderment. Essie, he said, how could anyone ever forget you? Essie's heart leapt. Well, when we were in the cellar, I swear to God I didn't know if we'd ever get out, and I had no idea what to do, and you were so cool about it. Essie laughed. Oh, sorry, that's him. He said, you were so cool. Essie said, yeah, I've never been called cool in my life. Yeah, well, then everyone you know is an idiot. You were taunting Hopkins? That was amazing to watch. It probably wasn't very wise of me, though, right? Essie said, and she wouldn't have been very surprised if he'd snapped and turned on them in the cellar, and then she probably would have had to freeze him to death, which wouldn't have been ideal. It was fun, though, said Josh, and his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She smiled back. Yeah, it was fun. His arm was warm on her shoulders and just the right weight. His bandaged hand cupped her shoulder and thumb stroked her gently. Essie could feel his breathing and the rise and fall of his chest and his beating heart. Around them, the conservatory was heavy with the scent of plants ripening and bursting into life. Hey, Grayson. She wasn't a witch who had any particular affinity for seeing the future, the odd premonition, sure, here and there, and the feeling of an event that she'd known was going to happen. But right now, she could see the future very, very clearly. Josh cleared his throat.
Hey, that first night you walked me home, you were so confident, like you were exactly where you should be all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I know this place pretty well.
It was more like it reshaped itself to be around you. Like if there was a stone that you were going to trip on, it would just move instead of tripping you.
She laughed. Okay, no, I don't have that kind of power.
Don't you? Because I'm pretty sure you could do anything.
She turned toward him at some point, her breasts against his rib cage and her hand on his chest. His heart was beating fast. She really wanted him, and this time she was sure it was going to happen the right way. This time she could be herself, and she could have what she wanted. This was Josh, and he knew who she was.
And then you kissed me,
he said in what was probably supposed to be an offhanded tone. I thought you kissed me, she said, and a cluster of Butterworth flowers nearby seemed to throb with color. Hey, Becca.
Well, yeah, I was going to kiss you, but you got to me first, said Josh, slightly exasperated.
I think it's because I knew that you were planning to.
Another witchy power of yours?
Essie laughed and looked up at him. No, Josh, it was written all over your face like a normal human.
It was?
His voice was hoarse. I'm pretty sure it was written all over my face too, to be fair, she said, and then his eyes met hers. His heart was really pounding under her palm.
It was a really good kiss.
Oh, I've been here since coffee. Oh, yeah, I knew that. I don't know why I said that then. That's weird.
It was a really good kiss,
he whispered. Yeah?
And that other one in the meadow?
His face was so close to hers that they were sharing the same breath. Heat rose between them. A sundew tendril snaked over Essie's foot. That wasn't a good kiss, she breathed, and the joy suddenly slipped away from Josh's face, and he turned his face away from her, his whole body stiffening. Essie cupped his jaw and turned him back to her. Firstly, it was an amazing kiss, she said, and his eyes reluctantly swiveled in her direction, and he swallowed.
And secondly?
And secondly, said Essie, moving more of her body to touch his, it was a lot more than a kiss. Her lips touched his, and Josh groaned and kissed her back. The arm he had around her shoulders curved and pulled her closer, and when she slid her thigh over his, he ran his other hand all the way up it. Yes, Essie gasped, and she needed him to touch her, all of her. All the time that she'd been sitting beside him in that terrible cellar, all the time she'd fought and argued with him, all the jokes and the flirting over the pub table, all of it had been leading to this moment, as if she had always known it. Josh pulled her over, and the bench creaked under their weight. Essie wouldn't have cared if it collapsed. His hand was on her back, pressing her closer to him as if she needed any encouragement. Her fingers burrowed into his hair, and the sensation of it against her fingers made her shudder. It was like he was on fire beneath her hands. She was wearing far too many clothes, and Josh's hand was on her back, but there was too much in the way. She needed to feel his hands, and she fumbled with the catch of her dungarees and released the straps, and Josh growled in approval as if his hand was finding the bottom of her t-shirt. Yes, that was what she needed. His fingertips were on her spine, and it sparked a wave of shivers that had her trembling against him, and heat pulsed through her. Let's see. His eyes smiled, and even as his hands were pulling up her t-shirt, Essie tore her mouth away from his long enough to toss away the offending garments. But there was a giant fly trap that snapped shut over the clothes. Josh stared at her and swallowed. Essie hadn't intended to put on a pretty bra today, but maybe she really had known what was going to happen, because it was a nice one, with lace and little flowers between the cups.
Yesterday,
he said hoarsely, gaze glued to the rise and fall of her breast.
In that corset, I thought I was gonna go blind every time you breathed.
Essie trailed her fingertips over the slight roughness of his cheek. I still have it in my room, she said, and Josh made a whimpering sound, diving in to kiss her again. Essie decided to assist him by reaching back and unfastening her bra, and Josh mumbled something that sounded like,
oh God, the freckles go all the way down.
And beepity beep boop beep. Yes, she breathed.
I've been fantasizing about these,
he said, and looked up to her with unfocused eyes. His hands cupped her, and
they're even better than I hoped.
Essie laughed, which made her chest jiggle and made Josh moan softly. Your turn, she said, plucking at his shirt, and he nodded, grabbing clumsily at the fabric. His eyes were still glued to her, however, and didn't really seem to be concentrating. Goodbye to your dungarees. Blah, blah, blah. Goodbye to his clothes. Blah, blah, blah. Careful, said Essie, steadying him. I need you to stay in one piece. You got as many pieces of me as you want, Josh promised, and took her in his arms to kiss her again. But now his chest was bare, and so was hers. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Essie silenced him with a kiss. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Beep, boop, beep. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Inappropriate for TikTok. Beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. Sorry, guys. I'll get you back in here in a second. Freckles, lust, sweaty and disheveled. She was drunk on it. Beep 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 boop beep tension. Beep boop beep boop beep doop boop. But this wasn't Sean, and she wasn't in some dingy student digs. She was with Josh, and she could control herself now. She was in control. Remember, I don't know if you guys don't remember. That's true, Becca. That's true. So I don't know if you guys remember, but the reason that her ex Josh was mad at her was because when they tried to hook up when they were in college, I guess she froze his pee-pee off by accident. He didn't force himself on her or anything. It was consensual, but she was nervous, and so she froze his pee-pee off, which was sad. Adios, pee-pee. Yeah, so bye-bye, pee-pee. Beep beep boop beep 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 boop beep boop beep boop. A sticky plant tendril grabbed her ankle and she kicked it away, irritated and miserable. Boop boop boop. Okay. The heat of the conservatory suddenly felt oppressive and heady, and the scent of the plants was oppressive as well. There's something I should probably tell you, she said. Oh. That was the end of the chapter. Okay, well, let's do this chapter's shorter, so let's do chapter 15 because it's shorter. Let's see what she has to tell him. I'm curious. Are you guys curious? What time is it? 9? Yeah, we can do this. Essie's bedroom was surprisingly normal. Josh didn't know exactly what he'd been expecting, but it wasn't floral wallpaper and IKEA bookshelves. There were several half-drunk mugs of tea going gently moldy on the bedside table and teetering piles of paperwork everywhere. Okay, Essie, we have to have a talk. You cannot leave tea molding on the windowsill. This is not a 6th grade experiment. You have to stop. Witch or not, if you're a witch, you should be able to clean up your tea. She picked a large gray cat up off the bed and hugged him as she gestured for Josh to take a seat. The cat eyed Josh smugly. See which one of us is getting the hug, the cat seemed to say to him. Her t-shirt had ended up being eaten by one of the plants, so Josh had offered her his shirt as they left the steamy conservatory. She'd refused it, and all of a sudden, distant and tense, and crossed her arms over the front of her dungarees instead. Josh realized he'd never seen her this unsure before. He had no idea what had gone wrong. Everything had been going extremely well, more than well if he could remember. As a matter of fact, there'd been and then right at the finish, she'd suddenly withdrawn from him and shut down and given up. He sat down on her bed, which had a duvet cover pattern covered with cats wearing sombreros, and he looked up at her. Hey, Essie, he said, we traveled through time together, and we survived a witch hunt, and we just had what was nearly the best beep boop of my life. Can you please tell me what's going on right now? Nearly, she said, and the cat grumbled, and she let him go, and Josh realized she was trembling slightly. Well, yeah, right up until the end, he said, and he held his hand out to her. Did I do something wrong? She shook her head vehemently. No, it wasn't you. You were perfect, she sighed, and then she looked nearly to tears. No, you are perfect. I mean, I'm really not, he reassured her. Come, let's sit down and talk, please. She took a step forward and then hesitated, her fingers twisting around one another, and finally she sat beside him and then immediately moved further away. 10 minutes ago, they'd been gloriously naked together, as close as two people physically could be, and now she couldn't even look at him. Hey, Essie? She nodded and swallowed a couple of times and said, so you saw what I did with the door in the cellar? Yeah, you froze it, said Josh. I guess the wood contracted as it got colder. Yeah, and then I used my magic to bind Hopkins in ice. It was, Josh tried to think of a word that wasn't terrifying and came up with the word impressive. It was impressive. Ice is the thing I do. Essie said glumly. Blessing nurtures things and brings them to life. Avery manifests things into reality. I make things cold. Essie, who smelled of snow and pine and performed rituals to welcome the winter, she was basically the snow queen, but she'd never made him cold. Josh vividly remembered the heat of her mouth, the slick sweat of her skin, and the warmth of her surrounding him. I can do it when I want to, but sometimes it happens without me trying, and the weather suddenly goes bad, or there's a frost around in June, or if I'm upset or excited, I'm not really in control of myself. She gave him a meaningful look, and it was the first time that she'd looked directly at him since she'd put her clothes back on. You mean, Josh licked his lips nervously, like when you're having beep boop. She nodded rapidly, gazing at her hands again. But it didn't happen with me, he said. He would have remembered that. He was pretty sure he would have remembered if that had happened. No. To his horror, a tear trickled down her face because I chose to stay in control. Realization swept over him. Essie, are you telling me to deliberately stop yourself because you didn't want to freeze things? Not things, she said, swiping her eyes. You. He tried to reach for her and reassure her, but she shied away from him. I'm not being paranoid, she said. It happened. It's happened before, and it was bad. Josh couldn't stop him from asking, how bad? Essie shuddered, like call an ambulance, loss of circulation, frostbite, reconstructive surgery, kind of bad, she said, and the tears were falling fast. Now, it destroyed his life. I destroyed his whole life. He was building up a terrible mental picture. You gave a guy frostbite just from touching him? Essie looked at him like he was stupid. Not just from touching him. Josh, Christ, we were having beep boop. Look, most people don't get there their first time, so I figured it was going really well. And then he started screaming, and her eyes darted to his crotch, and this time, realization was both swift and appalling. You froze his beep boop? The words flew out of him before he could stop them, and Josh could have recalled. And if Josh could have recalled them, he would have, because Essie started crying proper, big, ugly sobs that shook her entire body. He wanted to hug her, but to his terrible shame, he was a little afraid to. I didn't mean to, she wailed. I didn't know it would happen. He went around telling everyone on campus that I had some hideous sexually transmitted disease and it was a nightmare and I had to go and quit and go somewhere else. And I was so scared of hurting everyone else. And I took Avery's perception potion all the time and I made myself unnoticeable and I didn't date anyone. Josh's horror began to fade into something that felt a little bit more like pity. All the way through college, you didn't date anyone else? She shook her head miserably. Since then, I've been with 2 other guys, and by the time I got the courage to go up to bed with anyone, I was too scared to do it again, so I just held everything back, and I did a lot of faking, she added. And eventually I decided it just wasn't worth it. Oh, Essie. Vibrant, smart, glorious Essie, who walked through pitch-dark woods without fear and faced serial killers with the courage of a lion. And then you came along, she sniffed, and you were so, I thought maybe I could try again. I'm older and wiser, and you were... I was what? Said Josh. She hiccuped out a laugh and said, oh, come on, Josh, you're all gorgeous and funny and kind, and you didn't freak out about the witch stuff, and you're a really good kisser, and I thought that maybe... She hadn't wanted to hurt him. She held back for him and denied herself the pleasure that she'd let him have. Hey, Essie, he said and touched her shoulder, and she stiffened. You didn't hurt me. You've never hurt me. I might, though, she said. Do you really want to risk that? Yes, he thought. Look, how old were you when that happened? She shrugged forlornly. I was a late bloomer. All right, she didn't want to tell him. And now you're... Essie gave him a sideways look. I'm older than I look, okay? She said. Mistress Agatha had thought that Essie's mother was her sister, and Josh realized Lilith hadn't seemed quite old enough to be Essie's mother, and Essie herself looked less than 30. I'm 35, he said. Older or younger than that? Older, she said. She didn't appear to be inclined to tell him any more than that. Josh just nodded and said, all right, but since you were a student, you haven't gotten any better at, like, witchcraft and stuff? Essie, I watched you bind a man's soul into ice and send his ghost to heaven, or send ghosts to heaven all by yourself with no proper support. Could you have done that when you were younger? No, it's not the same kind of thing, she said. And Josh thought for a minute, okay, all right, I don't know anything about witchcraft. When we did that finding spell for Sienna, used that little doll thingy, right? With some kind of stone thing, right? Yeah. And for the window ritual, you were gathering all that holly and stuff. Those are just props to focus the mind. All right, so witching is like focusing the mind. It's like force of will. Sort of. Essie wiped at her eyes and sat up a bit straighter, apparently on safer ground now. I guess it's like an innate skill, like being really good at piano or being able to run really fast. We just have things that we can sort of do that most people can't do, but you have to practice and you have to concentrate really hard, especially for the big stuff. Big stuff like winter rituals. Yeah, like I can fight a fire without really thinking about it. She glanced at the fireplace, and Josh very nearly felt a small effort run out of her like a tiny shockwave, and the coals brightened into flames. See? That's amazing, Josh said, gazing at it. And you're an ice witch. You can make fire, and you're an ice witch? She shrugged. Oh, everyone can do that. I mean, everyone witchy can do that. Sure. You can just make fire by thinking about it. Yeah. And can you stop it? The flames died down very quickly. I mean, it's only a small fire. I couldn't put out like a towering inferno before you asked me to do that or anything. Josh thought about the cold that had radiated from her in Hopkins's bedroom and froze, and the frost that had crept over the window, the ice on the floor. She probably could stop a towering inferno if she really wanted to. All right, so you can control the fire, but not the ice? Of course I can control the ice, Essie snapped, and then she stopped and slumped. All right, I see what you're trying to do here, she said. He smiled. You do? If I can control the fire, why not the ice? Things don't burst into flames when I'm angry, she said. Were you angry when we were reboot? Josh said. It's the same thing. It's losing control. She shrugged away from him. I can't do it. I don't want to hurt you. She stood up and paced away from him, and Josh watched her, frustrated. It had been so good between them. Essie had abandoned herself. She was wild and delicious, and she'd been enjoying herself. And perfect. She had been perfect, and he simply didn't believe that she would suddenly turn him to frostbite. What feeds magic? He asked. What causes it? Where do you get your power from? Essie looked bewildered. I don't know, we just have it. But you have to practice it, right? Like you have to learn. I mean, you weren't born knowing how to light a fire, were you? Or were you? He added, because the thought of an infant pyromaniac was actually terrifying. No, of course not. You learn how to focus what you want to do, she said. Josh said nothing. He waited for the cogs to turn and watched her shoulders slump. Hey, look, he said, trying not to smile because he knew that he had her. If you're just too scared to try, then don't even start with that, she warned him. I'm just saying, practice makes perfect. You almost certainly could learn how to not freeze off my peen. She rubbed her face with one hand. You're really not taking this seriously. Or my fingers or my tongue, Josh said, because really there were plenty of possibilities for trials. You could deal with a frostbitten tongue, could you? Said Essie. I could learn sign language, said Josh. With your frostbitten fingers. He waggled them at her. I'm very versatile. Essie began to roll her eyes, and then she stopped. A totally different expression came over her face. Hey, do that again, she said. Wiggle your fingers. Josh did, a little bemused. Josh, you said you broke your hand last night. You said Sienna broke it. He looked at the bandage on his hand, and Lilith had splinted his hand and wrapped it up, but somewhere along the line, probably while they were beep-boop, it had loosened, and it had been more or less he had been using his hand like normal. Oh, yeah, well, Avery did give me some special tea, he said uncertainly. Essie sat down beside him and took his hand in hers, carefully working each finger. Do you have any pain? No. But you can feel it. You can feel me touching you? Essie, Josh said. I can always feel you touching me. Heat flared between them. Heat, not ice. Can I take this bandage off? She asked, and he just nodded. He never really thought of a bandage winding as erotic, but when Essie did it, bandage unwinding is erotic, but when Essie did it, it was. Pretty much everything she did was, and Josh had never been so turned on by a woman in his life. Essie was watching her face, not his hand, and so it was Essie who reacted first. It's bruised, she said, and her fingertips traced the back of his hand and then pressed lightly. Hey, does this hurt? A little. She carefully manipulated his fingers and his thumb. Does this hurt? And this? It probably wasn't as bad as it seemed, he said, and he didn't know what the big deal was. Whatever Avery gave me, that just helped. Well, when did you drink it? Last night. Essie shook her head. No, Avery's tea cannot heal bones, Essie said, and it doesn't last more than a few hours. They can make you forget that it hurts, but they can't actually fix anything. Only time helps broken bones to heal. Josh, this isn't even swollen. It should be agonizing you. Well, then I guess it wasn't as bad as I thought, he said. I overreacted. Things really did get pretty intense in there last night. Essie cocked her head. Have you ever broken a bone before? He shrugged. No. Sprains, pulled muscles? I mean, when I was 14, I got hit in the head by a basketball, said Josh, but there was no concussion. I got off lightly. Everyone was surprised. He remembered that. Essie was frowning in a way that he didn't like. When was the last time you were ill? She said. I don't really get ill. I exercise, I eat right. He said, wait, why are you asking? Essie's thumb was still stroking the bruise on the back of his hand. Avery said Last night, as soon as you held Sienna's hand, she calmed down, like sort of like a hand-holding epidural. Josh winced. His memory of the birth was somewhat hazy because he had just traveled through time to escape a probably gruesome death, and he was exhausted and he had no idea what was happening. He had just held Sienna's hand and told her everything was going to be all right, and she seemed relieved to have her brother there. Essie was looking at him now as if she was a zoologist and he was a monkey that had just started reciting Shakespeare. You could see the ghost, she murmured. You mean Prudence? I mean Mary, but I guess, yeah, Prudence too. Josh, that piece of parchment, it shouldn't have had any effect on you. Not even after I accidentally got blood on it. As he took his thumb and inspected the pad of it, how quickly did this cut heal? I don't know, like a normal amount of time, he said impatiently. What's normal? Less than a day? Essie, look, less than a day is not normal, Josh. Broken bones healing in a day aren't normal. Never getting sick isn't normal. And you eased Sienna's pain. She got up and went to her dresser and came back with a small pair of scissors. Essie, Josh said warningly. He didn't like how sharp those were. Nothing ventured, she said, and scored a line across the back of her hand. Fuck, Essie, what are you doing? He yelped and grabbed hold of the hand that held the scissors and flung them away. What are you doing? Essie regarded the blood welling up from her skin. Do you want to heal it or not? She asked as if she was offering him a plate of biscuits. Heal? What are you talking about? Essie held her hand under his face. Make it better, she said. Will it to be better? She had gone mad. Or maybe he had. Essie. But she wasn't backing down. So for the sake of it, Josh took her hand in his, closed his eyes, and said, all right, I will this cut to heal. Said Essie. Josh opened his eyes and the cut was still oozing. You see? Nothing. Essie, for the love of God, promise me you won't do something crazy like that again. He carefully wrapped his hand around hers. Please, don't ever hurt yourself like that. Essie looked up into his face, and with her other hand she gently touched his cheek. All right, she said. I won't. But Josh, the next time you hurt yourself, a shaving cut or whatever, can you just tell me how long it takes to heal? He brought her hand to his mouth and kissed it. You think I have healing powers? It was a ludicrous suggestion. I think there's more to you than the eye can see, she said cryptically. She glanced down at her hand and smiled. See? Already stopped the bleeding. Like normal, Josh said, but he wasn't quite so sure anymore. No, not really, said Essie, and then to his surprise, she kissed him. And the smell of pine and ice and smoke was there, and she kissed him with her soft, warm lips, and for a moment he forgot everything that had just happened. Essie was soft and warm under the dungarees she wore, a lacy bra, and not much else, and his fingers simply adored touching her. Hey, look, I have a deal for you, she said when he let her go. A deal? He'd probably agree to sell her his house for a handful of beans right now if she asked him to. If you promise to take my suggestion seriously that you can heal things, even if it's just for yourself, then I promise to try not to hurt you. Josh narrowed his eyes and tried to think beyond her fingers caressing his neck. Because you think I can heal myself? No. I mean, you need to learn to focus your will, and so do I. And that takes practice. So she took a deep breath in, which drew his gaze downward. Will you help me practice? Josh felt a smile begin to spread as he realized what she was asking. Are you asking me, he clarified, for beep boop practice? Essie blushed a little. Yeah, I guess. Maybe I am. Essie. Josh's smile widened into a grin. I thought you would never ask. So apparently he is healing, maybe like a healing flame or who knows what, and she freezes things. So that's very interesting, very interesting. Excellent chapters as always. This book keeps taking twists and turns that I never could have expected, that's for darn sure. Very good, very good. That's fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a lot of errands to run today, but depending on when I get back, I should get on and make like Scarecrow and Ruby slippers, because I think I only have 2 or 3 slimes left to make for all the pre-orders. A lot of pre-orders have already gone out, ones that don't need those slimes in them, and stuff like that. And yeah, everything is going swimmingly. The post office is closed on Monday, just so everyone remembers. But that means I have 1 extra day to pack up a ton of stuff, which means most orders, if not all of them, will mail out on Tuesday, which is great. And the book is just chef's kiss. I completely agree. And I can't wait to see where the whole series goes. I'm glad that it's not just 1, that there's 3 and we don't have to wait like a super long time to read the next one. So here's my thought, and you all can correct me if you think I'm wrong. We picked a second book for Witchy Season, but I put it on hold at the library, and it's a series. There's 3, Sloth. There's 3 so far. Who knows if there's gonna be more, but there's at least 3. Is it just? I actually don't know, but I love her style anyway, so I figured we should read them anyway. If the book that we picked to be the next one, the Once and Future Witches, pops up when we're done with this one on my library, we'll go right into reading that, and then we'll go back to this series afterwards. But if it doesn't come up yet, we can go into the next book in this series and then read the next one when it becomes available, because there was a little bit of a wait at the library to get the Once and Future Witches. It said something like, I think it said something like 8 or 12 weeks when I put it on hold, but that was before I left for my trip. So who knows when it'll come up. Sometimes I get them early because I check out a lot of books. So sometimes I get that like early button, you know, because I read a lot of them. So we'll see what happens. But I think either way, we've got some good stuff. And I think we can just read these like cozy witchy books and the witch stuff like through November. And then sometime in November, we can pick some holiday, like maybe one Hanukkah book, one Christmas book for December. That feels nice. And then I think we all agreed that for January and early February, that's hilarious, Becca. For January and February, we wanted to read something nostalgic before the baby comes. And so we were thinking either like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, not that one, but like that series, you know what I mean? The Chronicles of Narnia is something. Yeah, totally nice. I think we just have to go with when it comes up in the library, right? Like we don't know when it's going to become available to me, so I'm just going to go with that. We could also do Princess Diaries we talked about doing, you know what I mean? So there's like a bajillion options for us for nostalgic stuff for January, and that's our anniversary. Our 2-year anniversary comes up in January, so that's pretty exciting. It would be so much fun, Jess. I totally agree. So all good things there. Yeah, I don't really have anything else, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole kit and caboodle. So I will see you all later, time depending, with third movie. That's true, Priscilla. That is totally true. The third Princess Diaries is coming out. Do you think we'll finish the book next week? I don't know, Avery. Let me see how many chapters there are. Hold on one second and I can give you guys a better estimate. Let's see. We've been reading, so the chapters vary in length pretty significantly because like I said, some of the chapters are like really long and some are quite a bit shorter. So it's hard to say, but we're at the 75% mark. It appears that there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 5 chapters left. So I think no matter what, we're going to be finished with this next week, whether we finish it in the middle of the week or the end of the week. This book will be done next week one way or another, because there's only 5 more chapters. So even if we did Monday through Friday, we'd still be done. If some of the chapters are short, we will. Yeah, that's true, Naisa. That is also true. But if some of the chapters are shorter, we might do 2 in a day and then we'd finish faster, you know? So I'll prepare the next book regardless so that it's already on my Kindle and we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, we're rocking and rolling as usual. I think Princess Diaries is a great choice for the anniversary. I don't see any issue with that. And, you know, it's a very nostalgic, I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you guys, but I think I might have told you guys, I have a signed first edition of the Princess Diaries because I bought it the first month that it came out when I was very young. And then when Meg Cabot came to New York City to do a book signing on the like anniversary of it, when she came out with the 10th one, instead of bringing the 10th one like everyone else in line had, I brought my first edition. And she was like, oh my God, you have the first one with like the old cover on it. And I was like, yes, I've been holding on to this since I was literally 13 years old. And she was very excited to see it. So I have that. I probably won't use that one for reading because I kind of just like keep it on the shelf all safe or whatever, because it's what inspired me to write and all that stuff. So I probably won't read that one. We'll probably just download it, you know, and read it on the Kindle. But I do have that and I can show you guys the cover of it. It's actually a very cool cover. It's just like an ombre pink with a crown on the cover, and then on the back is a combat boot, if you've read the original. So like a lot of people haven't actually, who's actually read the Princess Diaries and who's only seen the movie. It would be actually really interesting because the movies are great. I actually have nothing wrong with the movies. I love them. Right, Jess? It's so crazy. You've done both, yeah. So I read the books long before the movies existed, obviously, and I think people who have only ever seen the movie will find this really fun. The other thing I want to tell you all about the book series, first of all, the book series is quite extensive and it's fantastic, but there's so much great like little tidbits in it. Oh, you'll love it, Gigi. It's so much fun. But what I was going to say is, for those of you who love Broadway, Meg Cabot is a huge Broadway person and lived in New York City while she was writing the series. And so she slipped in a lot of like little Broadway tidbits into it. So we'll save it, Gigi. Read it with us together so we can all do it together. We'll have such a good time. There's all these little things, like, for example, when I moved, this is not a spoiler at all, it's just like little Easter eggs that she puts in there. When I first moved to New York City, one of the first shows that I saw on Broadway was Tarzan, which by the way ended up being a flop, but I loved it. And in one of the future books, in the Princess Diaries series, I think it's like book 7 or 8, like not an early one by any means, she mentions Tarzan the musical and how much she loved going to it. And I was like, same girl, same. And so there's a whole bunch of funny little tidbits like that, and all these little New York Easter eggs. So it's a lot of fun. The cool thing about the Princess Diaries series is that you get to stay with these characters that you love for a really long time. And there's also little like, how do I explain it? Like little special editions. Like, so for example, you might do like, so there's book 1, 2, and 3, and then there's a special like little novella in the middle that's like just about her birthday party that year, and that's it. You know what I mean? And then there's one, and then there's like 4, 5, and 6, and then there's a little 1/2 book that's just about Christmas that year. You know what I mean? And cool stuff like that. And then this is really cool. When you get to the 10th book, well, I don't want to say what happened. Okay, there's something special. It's kind of like bonus chapters, Jess. Yeah, there's something very special about the 10th book where there's a companion book, and there's 2 that you can read at the same time for book 10. So book 10 is really book 10 and 11, and it's a lot of fun. And I have those so we can do the whole thing. That might be like a really fun thing to do, just like, you know, whatever. So I know we'll want to read other things too, but it is just fun. Yeah, me too, Naisa. I have the whole collection and everything, so we'll be able to go through all of those. And yeah, guys, can you believe we're almost at our 2-year anniversary? It's freaking wild. So fun. So wild that like I have so much joy in my heart for the fact that like this is something that worked. I don't know. It's so nice. It feels so good and so wholesome in every way. Tandem books, yes, exactly. And I don't want to say why, Naisa, because I don't want to spoil it, because there is a really cool reason why there's a tandem book, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but it's very cool, and I think that everyone will be very excited by it, so that's cool. Now, here is another thing I'm going to tell you guys. I will be uploading more chapters of the audiobook of my book over the next week. Oh, it's the joy of my life, Claire. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's like, it's so fulfilling for me. Book club is like, it's something that I started as like for me, for personal reasons thing, and it ended up being such a joy. This is the only thing that's like, there's no work involved. It's just for fun. It makes me feel happy. You know what I mean? It's a passion project. Exactly. You know that sticker that Shira makes that says, I tried to start a gang, but it turned into a book club? You know, that's my thing. And you know what the really cool part about the book club thing is? Hearing and getting emails from people like Anya and other people that say like, I had stopped reading after school and wasn't reading more, and now I read all the time. And it's like, that's so cool. As someone who's always been a reader, inspiring people to read more is just like the greatest gift. Jess, Shira makes them. If somebody reminds me or puts it in the book club chat, we can ask Shira to list them on her website again so everyone can get them. Fable is an app you can create clubs. Oh, that's fun. I didn't know about that. I wish that we could read graphic novels on here. It wouldn't work because, first of all, it's pictures and I don't know how I would do that. But if any of you have never read the Fables series, speaking of Fables, I highly recommend that as well. But I will check out Fable, the app. Very cool. Wait, what am I helping you with, Becca? Why are you yelling for help? All right, so anyway, I love you all. It's great for me. Anxiety makes it super hard for me to read to myself. Yeah, I get that, Sloth. I don't think you're the only one, you know? Oh, okay, I'll look at it in a second, Becca. But yeah, it's a fun group and we have a great time, and we're almost at our 2-year anniversary. Freaking wild. For our 2-year anniversary, we're getting a new book club member. I'm making us a book club member. That's my 2-year anniversary gift to the book club. I'm making a new member. All right, Secret Husband's still asleep, but we're supposed to go on many an errand today, so maybe he'll wake up, and if not, I'll just go have breakfast and wait for him. I'll see you guys later.